All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Facts Over Feelings podcast. Ryan, good to be with you.
Yes, sir.
Today, we have some more news in the sports world concerning several leagues. The NBA has made headlines in the last couple of days, presenting different playoff and regular season options. And several other sports like the NFL have come out with news about training camp, and even other professional sports like the PGA Tour and soccer leagues in Europe are coming out with concrete dates to start playing games again. So, Ryan, I will hand it off to you to start talking about the NFL training camp.
All right, yeah. So as Trevor said, we have had a lot of sports leagues in the last week, really coming out with, firm return dates and concrete plans for, starting their seasons back up. And in regards to the NFL, they have said that they believe they can get a full training camp in before the start of the season, and that they can do this on time. Now, this is very good news, obviously, for everybody. I know that they also announced that they're hoping to bring coaches back this upcoming week in every team facility throughout the country. So that's very good because they didn't want to give a competitive advantage to certain teams who could bring coaches back earlier, right? So they had them all stay home for longer. So
Mm-hmm.
so coaches are coming back next week, and I know that also the NFL has said that they're hoping to have fans in attendance still when the season starts. So that's kind of an um, interesting little tidbit there. I know not everyone would agree with that, or some people would be skeptical. So that's just something to keep an eye on.
Awesome. Obviously, the NFL is a very popular sport in the U.S.,
Hmm.
and that is great news to hear, especially since a lot of things have been very uncertain these last couple months. It's great to hear that the NFL plans to have a full, complete training camp on time, which means a start of the season on time with no excuses for rustiness or delay. So that's a
Yep.
great sign for the NFL. A couple of other sports that have made headlines with concrete dates. The PGA Tour has announced that June 11th, they will be playing a competitive tournament again called the Charles Schwab Challenge. That will be June 11th through the 14th in Fort Worth, Texas. The English Premier Soccer League has announced that they will be beginning play again June 17th. So that is a great sign for soccer fans, which may not be as popular in the US, but obviously popular all across the world. And
Yeah.
finally, I think we mentioned this already on the previous episode. Maybe we haven't. The NHL has agreed to a 24 team playoff format. That is to include all the teams that were on the bubble of making the playoff in the most fair way possible.
Mm.
One caveat to that, they agreed to the format. They have not officially agreed to playing the season out. They have basically what happened was the meeting they had about the 2014 playoff format was to confirm that's how they would play the season out if they were going to. We
Oh,
would
I see.
assume they're going to play the season out if they agree to a format of playing the season out, but they have not confirmed that yet. Just a small caveat.
Mm.
Um, and then we get to the NBA, which I think I touched on it already, has released four different ways of concluding the season, and I'll let Ryan touch on those a little bit more.
Yeah, yes, they have. So the NBA listed four, as Trevor said, there were four different proposals for how the season could resume or finish. And I just wanted to just jump into these and talk about each of these. So the first proposal was that 16 teams just go directly into the playoffs. So this is obviously kind of the most straightforward option. And it's been reported there are some owners that do support this option. There's relatively few people involved, at least comparatively, right? Because it's just 16 teams as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
22, 20, or 30. Um, and they said that they would keep the conference format, so it would just be the normal 1 through 8 in each conference. Um, but there are downsides because a lot of players have said many times that they want regular season games. They need regular season games to shake off the rust, as a lot of these star players have said. Um, and so this wouldn't provide any of that. So that would be kind of, I don't know if it would have any traction with the players. It seems like it hasn't. Um, and also, it also takes out a lot of the NBA teams, right? It takes out like half the teams in the NBA and just says you have no shot, no more games, that's it. So some of these other options, which I'll go into in a minute, kind of they involve a lot more teams and also, you know, have some regular season games played for the players to shake off that rust. I personally, well, Trevor, I don't know. Do you want to talk about like our opinions on these right now, or do you want me to just go through these real quick and then we talk about them after?
Um, I'll give my opinion real quick
All right.
on the one
Yeah.
that I like the best. So I
Okay.
don't
Yeah.
know.
Sure.
There is the 16 team method. Ryan
Yep.
gave in great detail. There's another 20 team method, which is a World Cup style
Yes.
way of playing out the season. That one's a little bit harder to explain.
It's just
I
four
would encourage you
groups
to
of
look that one up
five.
because Ryan and I, yeah, okay, so it's really not that hard to
I'm
explain. Actually, I
sorry.
don't know
I'm
why I said
sorry.
that. It's all good, all good. That one just has a more aspect of randomness, so you
Mhm.
could see why teams would be a little upset with that one. The 22 team method or 24 team method, they've been negotiating the amount of teams. That one, in my opinion, is the best way of going out finishing the season because there's the right amount of balance between rewarding teams that were winning the first 6 months of the season and allowing teams who have a reasonable chance of making the playoffs to play out some meaningful games and to give them a shot at getting a spot for the eighth seed. So, to go into a little bit more depth, basically the idea of the 22 team regular season and playoff is all the teams will have 8 regular season games to play, and then all the teams who are on the bubble of the eighth seed will play a play-in tournament to determine who the eighth seed is. So teams like the Trailblazers, the Pelicans, the Kings, the Suns, and the Spurs, who are all within 6 games of the eighth seed, along with Memphis, who is narrowly holding on to the eighth seed, would all, I believe, play in, as of right now, would play a play-in tournament to determine who gets in that eighth spot. And then again, I like this method also because you are rewarding the teams like the Clippers, like the Lakers, like the Bucks, who were winning a lot in the regular season, and um,
Okay.
and basically, yeah, and
Sure.
by doing something like the World Cup method,
Hmm.
uh, one or two ruin so much success about it.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. You cut out for a second. But yeah, no. I mean, I agree. The World Cup method.
Uh,
It's kind of a weird method. Uh, as Trevor said, there's a lot of randomness to it. And the reason a lot of teams weren't a fan of this idea is because it doesn't really reward teams for all the hard work they did in the regular season to get these top
exactly,
seeds, right?
exactly.
So it just kind of it's kind of like, okay, maybe it's kind of cool. We have like some upsets, but it's like, is that really fair? And so, I completely understand that, and I know why like it's not supported by players or owners. And so, as Trevor said, that 22 or 24 team method is a pretty cool idea. I think that's what they're going to be going with. I think they're going to go with. I don't know how many teams they're going to go with. That's actually really interesting because if they do 24, it includes the Wizards and I don't know who else. It includes the Wizards and one other team. Uh,
Uh,
oh wait,
not
never mind.
sure.
No, it's not. No, it's not. I actually, I'm sorry. I don't know who else it is. It would be, um, I believe, would it be Charlotte? It'd be Charlotte and Chicago, I think maybe. So I think that looks right to me. So that would be kind of interesting. In my personal opinion, this isn't the only downside to this idea is this whole 8 seed play-in thing. And the reason that is because why are you gonna punish this team that is in the 8 seed at the end of that? So you play these 8 regular season games, and then the standings at the end of those games, those aren't even the playoff standings. It's like, okay, well, I got the 8 seed. I worked hard, and now I have to play a play-in tournament to keep my 8 seed. I feel like that's a little bit unfair. Although I will say I think that'd be really fun because it'd be super super competitive. You get to see some really young teams uh, getting into the playoffs that otherwise wouldn't have. So I think that's a really cool method. I just think it's kind of a little. It also is a little bit unfair to that 8 seed team that pretty much deserved to make the playoffs. And then, real quick, I wanted to mention obviously, there's that one last idea, which is all 30 teams, and they play, I think uh, they would play up to 72 regular season games, and then there would be a play in tournament followed by just the playoffs. So that would be kind of strange, and I think the reason the league's not supporting that is because there's too many teams to handle in Orlando, which, I mean,
Mhm.
hey, I get that. If we have to go down to 24 or 22 teams to get the NBA back, I'm sure we'll all sacrifice that. So yeah, I mean, there's upsides and downsides to every plan, but Yeah, I don't know what you think about that 8 seed play-in tournament. I don't know if you think.
So okay, I partially agree with you that is slightly unfair, the
Mhm.
8 seed play-in tournament. Here's
Yeah.
what I will say. I think the reason why they're doing that is because they're only doing 8 regular season games, and if you do the math, the NBA regular season has about 20 regular season games left, so they wouldn't be playing out the full regular season games per se. So I think it rewards. Here's what it does: it rewards Memphis because as long as Memphis doesn't go 0-8 in those 8 games, they'll have the easiest road in the play-in tournament to the 8 seed. Whereas a team like the Suns, who are already 6 games back, will probably have to win a bunch of games just to get into the 8 seed. Um, so I think it's slightly unfair, but I think they've made it fair enough to where, again, you're keeping the teams that should be involved in playing out the season. You're keeping it, I think it's just the most fair method of going about it. And you're also basically keeping the entire playoffs with the exception of those bottom 2 teams who will not win a championship anyways. Not saying that's a good justification, but that's why I think it's the
Well,
best method.
I also think it's important that people realize why the NBA is choosing to do 22 or 24 teams instead of 30, right?
Right.
So the reason
Right.
they're doing that is because what they've done is they've said, okay, we have, what is it, 20 games left in the season, and they're saying, okay, in historically, how low do you have to be? How many games back do you have to be in order to have a chance at making the playoffs? And so the reason they've chosen
Right.
22 or
Right.
24 is because teams like the Suns, who are 6 games back, historically have had a chance and have done it before. They have come back and made the 8 seed. It's really uncommon,
Right.
but it's happened. So
Right.
for people
Right.
wondering
Right.
why is the cutoff there? I mean, the Cleveland Cavaliers haven't been eliminated from playoff contention. Well, no, they haven't. But listen, like they're not going to make it. Okay, they'd have to pretty much almost
Exactly.
win out.
The Minnesota
So
Timberwolves at
go,
19
yeah,
and 50 or whatever
yeah.
aren't going to make
So
the playoffs back or third, whatever they're at.
yeah,
So
so
I completely
people
agree with you, Ryan. There, yeah, I completely agree with you there.
Yeah, so people wondering, why that cutoff, that's why, because they've looked at the history and they've said that these are the teams that historically have a chance. So yeah, we thought that if all these different formats, there was another little format that we thought was really cool, and I mean this is kind of going off this. It's a conferenceless format, so they format the teams 1 through 16, and
Based
and
solely on regular season
just
record,
based on the
regardless
record,
of conference.
which we thought was really interesting. And I think, Trevor, we wanted to go through it and kind of look at these matchups and just check it out and see who we think would benefit most from this. Who could have a road to the championship if they do a conferenceless tournament?
Yeah, why not? I think this is just a lot of fun for the fan perspective. And there are, out of these 8 matchups, I think 5 or 6 are very, very intriguing.
Mm.
So the first matchup, the number 1 seed Milwaukee Bucks would play the 16 seed Orlando Magic. That would be a sweep. No intrigue in that one. Milwaukee will win 4-0. However, the next matchup below, the 8-9 matchup, the Miami Heat versus the Oklahoma City Thunder, is a really intriguing matchup for multiple reasons. One, both these teams have greatly overachieved this season. I think you and I can both agree on that one, Ryan. They have both
Sure.
exceeded expectations mightily.
Yes.
2, very even teams, a lot of young talent on both sides, and again, like just the unknown of the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Miami Heat. Nobody thought they'd be that good, so that'd be an intriguing matchup for a couple of reasons.
Hmm.
Going down the bracket, the 4-13 matchup, the Los Angeles Clippers and the Dallas Mavericks. I think that matchup is incredibly intriguing for star power reasons. You got Luka
Oh, no
Doncic, you
doubt.
got Porzingis on the Mavericks, you got Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and then to a little bit of a lesser extent, Lou Williams and a couple others on the LA Clippers. Just a lot of star power and a lot of incredible talent in that matchup.
Mm.
And then the final matchup on the left side of the bracket would be the 5-12 matchup, which is the Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers. And that would be a really, again, another intriguing matchup, a bitter rivalry. A lot of star power on both sides. Jason Tatum emerging, Kemba Walker, a perennial all-star, Ben Simmons, a young all-star, Joel Embiid, a young all-star. A lot of star power in that
Mm.
first round matchup. And I think a conferenceless bracket makes the first round of the NBA playoffs a lot less predictable and a lot more entertaining. Oftentimes, the first round of the NBA playoffs are quite predictable, a lot of sweeps, a lot of 5-round matchups or 5-game matchups, excuse me. I think this would change that. And then, Ryan, I guess you can go through the other side of the bracket. But
Well, yeah, I mean, I just want to go off your point for a second there. I mean, I totally agree. I think it makes it definitely more entertaining, in the sense of the early rounds become a lot more intriguing because you have some really, really
Mhm.
like talented teams going against each other in the first round, which does not happen in a lot of these first round playoff series. Um, I will say the Eastern Conference owners have made it very clear that they're opposed to this, pretty much because they don't want it to happen in future seasons. Because if you're the Eastern Conference, the bottom half of your conference is a little bit worse, right? I mean, that's just the way it's been for a long, long time. And so
Absolutely, absolutely.
these owners, they're really, putting their foot down and they're saying we don't want this to happen in future seasons. So they're either going to let it go for this one season or they're not going to let it go at all because they don't want it in the future. I mean, that makes
Mhm,
sense.
mhm.
Uh, so yeah, sure. I'll go through the right side of the bracket, and just look at these matchups. So first we have the Lakers and the Nets, and this matchup, it it's all dependent on if Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant play. If Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant play,
Absolutely.
I think the Nets could beat the Lakers, and I don't think that that's a crazy thing to say at all. Um, I think that that'd be an insanely good first round matchup, and I would watch every game of that series.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
don't think they're both going to come back. I think maybe Kyrie comes back. I know KD has said. I think he said that he wasn't planning on returning. Maybe that's changed because the season's continuing to get pushed back. And
Mhm,
it's looking like a late
mhm.
July return. So maybe he comes back. But regardless, it'll be kind of a fun series, especially if Kyrie's in. Nets might steal a game or two. It'll be entertaining. Nets have some young talent, but the Lakers will probably win. And then we have the Jazz and the Rockets, which I think is also a fantastic first round playoff
Fantastic
series.
match. That
Uh,
would be a great
oh yeah,
matchup.
I mean you have a young team in the Jazz going against a little bit of an older but still extremely fast and small and talented team in the Rockets. I mean, I would probably take. That's a really hard series, actually. I'd probably take the Rockets, but just because I think
Having
their small ball has been really effective.
there.
Yeah, I mean, with PJ Tucker at the 5, I mean that's a small lineup right there. Robert Covington at the 4, but yeah, that's a 6 or 7 game series, no doubt. I think that would be one of the best series to watch. And then you have the Toronto Raptors versus the Memphis Grizzlies. I think this would also be a really good series. I think the Raptors would
Mhm.
win, but you've John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr., who are both they're really talented players. Like people forget how good
Right.
Jaren Jackson Jr. is. He's been very talented this year. Hits threes, I think, almost a 40% clip. He's a nice rebounder, but he's the quintessential power forward slash center for today's NBA. So
Mhm.
I really like that series. I think Siakam's too good with Fred VanVleet and Lowry, but that'd be a really fun series. And then you have the Nuggets and the Pacers, who would also have a really, really entertaining matchup because I think the Nuggets have had. I mean, I don't really trust them in the playoffs, and I know Trevor and I have talked about this a little bit. We both don't really trust them, and I know they're young. I know that's probably why because they haven't had a lot of playoff experience. They got good really fast. But yeah, I think playing against a team like the Pacers, who doesn't have a lot of talent, they have T.J. Warren and Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis, good players, not great players. But yeah, I think those would all be really, really entertaining series. And to your point, like it's definitely more interesting than a conference playoff bracket.
Real quick point, as you just mentioned,
Yeah.
I mean, we went through all 8 of those matchups. I think
Mhm.
we could easily say that 7 of those are quite intriguing.
Oh yeah.
6 if Kyrie and Kevin Durant don't play, then the Lakers would win easily.
Hmm.
But outside of the Bucks Magic first round matchup in a conferenceless playoff bracket, I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of those matchups could go either way, and a lot of those matchups could be long series. So I think it would be
Mm.
really fun from a fan's perspective to see the unpredictability of that.
It would be a
But
lot of
as you
fun.
mentioned, it will most likely not happen. Obviously, Eastern Conference teams and owners are not very fond of this method. But
Sure.
for you and I, it's fun to talk about and it's fun to think about. So why not
Yeah,
talk about
and it really can happen this season. I mean, it's very possible, and
it?
I
You're
think
right.
that
That is true. It could happen this
yeah, and I
season.
think that's really cool. And I mean, to me, you look at this bracket right here, and I'm thinking, like, I could see one, two, 3, 4, 5. I could see 5 or 6 NBA champions here. Like really. And I know, I guess you could argue that in the conference brackets as well, but I just think there's more of an opportunity here, just because you have some of these teams who are playing high quality opponents early on, so it's getting them ready to go very fast. And I think that
Right,
would benefit
right.
some teams here. Like, for example, if the Clippers or the Mavs, whoever won that series, I would say they go straight to the conference finals. I think they'd beat the Celtics or the Sixers, and then I think you'd have a nice matchup with the Milwaukee Bucks going into the finals. And then on that right side of that bracket, you have the Raptors, the Rockets, the Lakers, the Jazz, who really are all contenders to go to the finals. So like I
Hmm.
just think it's really neat. You
Hmm.
have a lot of high quality teams going up against each other early. So it's really neat.
Absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely.
And then I also think, while we're on this whole NBA topic, I think that, we have to go through both options here. So I think it might be time for you and I to go through the current 1 through 8 matchups in the Eastern and Western conferences
Oh,
because,
okay.
this is probably how it's going to play out with both the Eastern and Western conferences doing their normal playoff seedings. So I don't know. I think maybe we should just run through any of these different matchups here and just talk about them. And maybe if there's a team that benefits a lot from having, going back to the conference format. So,
Hmm.
I'll just start off real quick. You have Milwaukee and Orlando again. So, I mean, we all think Milwaukee's going to win that, and they will. And then you have
Yeah,
Toronto.
Milwaukee. Yeah, yeah.
What?
Sorry, go ahead. I was just gonna say Milwaukee won the season series 4-0. They won every game by
Mm,
double digits. So just to further our point that Milwaukee will sweep Orlando. Go
there
ahead,
you go.
Ryan.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. So then you have Toronto and Brooklyn, as opposed to, if you had the conferenceless bracket, it would be Toronto versus Memphis. And if I'm Toronto, and again, it's really, really dependent on if Kyrie and KD play. Uh, but I mean, two matchups that they might not really like, but shouldn't really be a trouble for the Mavericks in the long run. And or the Mavericks, I'm sorry, the Raptors. And the Raptors won 3 out of 4 games in the season, so they've shown they can handle Brooklyn. And then you have Boston versus Philly again. I think this season Philly is kind of uh, beaten Boston uh, 3 times out of 4. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't Boston kind of dominate Philly for a few years in the playoffs? Didn't
Yeah,
Philly have trouble getting past them?
Boston had a long winning streak against
Mm,
Philadelphia
hmm
over the course of several years. And then a couple years back, they beat the 76ers in 5 games in the second
Okay,
round of the playoffs.
that's what it was.
That was, I think, that was 2 years ago, I believe.
Mm,
That was the year, that was 2018, where they beat Philadelphia in 5 games. And then I think they lost to the Cavaliers with LeBron in
they did.
2018.
That's what it was.
But
Okay.
that's irrelevant, obviously.
No,
But
it is
yes,
irrelevant, but
Philadelphia has had issues with Boston. But again, I think the rivalry and them being
mm.
bitter East Coast rivals would make that an entertaining
And
first
yeah,
round
and I
series.
think also it's important to point out that Phillies they have a lot of talent. If they can just put it all together, they could. I mean, they could make the finals really if they were able to put it all together. I don't think they'll
Hmm.
do it. But and then you have the final matchup with Miami versus Indiana, and here to me is the difference that I see. The Heat lead the series 2-0 against Indiana, and then you look at the conferences bracket, and you would have the Heat versus the Thunder. And if I'm the Miami Heat, I would much rather play the Indiana Pacers than the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think the Thunder are a lot more talented. I think uh, I think they're just a better overall team. Um,
Hmm.
but it's still an interesting series, 4 versus 5. So I don't know if you want to comment on any of those games or if you want to slide over to the right side.
Yes. Real quick on the Toronto Brooklyn. As of right now,
Mm,
KD won't. It doesn't seem like KD will play. So if I'm
yeah.
Toronto, I'd probably rather play Brooklyn than Memphis.
Mm,
Um, and again, I think Memphis also playing in the West. I think Memphis is better than their record shows
mm,
because they are in the West. But yeah, Toronto benefits from a conference bracket as well as you mentioned already, Miami. Moving over to the Western Conference, speaking of Memphis, they would play the Los Angeles Lakers. And once
mm-hmm,
again, I think Memphis would much rather play the Raptors in a first round playoff matchup over the Los Angeles Lakers.
mm.
LeBron, Anthony Davis, they're on a mission. I don't think they lose in the first round. Here we go again, though. LA, Dallas, same thing as the conferenceless bracket. Be a
There you
great
go.
matchup, in my opinion. Lots of star power. Denver, Houston. This is an interesting one for me because Denver would get Indiana in the first round in a conferenceless bracket. So
Mm,
I do think Denver would much rather play Indiana over Houston,
No doubt.
and Houston would get Utah in the first round. So I don't know if Houston cares about Denver or Utah. Like, would Houston rather play?
Probably
Like, does
not.
Houston have a preference to those
I'm
two
sure they
teams?
have a
Okay,
preference, but they're pretty even, right, in our eyes. So it would
right. In
just
our
be up
eyes,
to.
yeah, I agree. So I
Mhm.
think Denver is hurt by the conference bracket, and then you look at this would be a terrific first round matchup.
Mm.
The 4 or 5 matchup in the West would be Utah, Oklahoma City.
Yep.
Uh, Again, Utah would be playing Houston, Oklahoma City would be playing Miami. Um, I think that match. I think all of those matchups I just mentioned, hypothetically, are all super even. And you look at Utah, Oklahoma City; they're
Yeah.
separated by one. Their season series is 1-1. That would be a terrific matchup. So,
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of that. I think it's hard for me to judge Utah because I feel like they're very inconsistent. I know during the season they would go on a lot of winning streaks and losing streaks, very hot and cold
hmm
team. They're a tough team to judge. For me, I'm really interested to see what Oklahoma City does in these playoffs. I think it's remarkable what they've done after they got rid of Paul George and Russell Westbrook, and they had such a quick turnaround, and they had so many first-round picks for Paul George. I think it's really unbelievable, and I think it kind of sets a blueprint for how to quickly revamp a team. And it kind of, they're laughing at Russell Westbrook now, especially if they go further in the playoffs, because it's like, look what we did without you, right? But yeah, I think they're a really interesting team to follow. One thing I do want to talk about for a few minutes here is Trevor. I want your thoughts on out of these teams that could potentially, finish out the regular season in Orlando and then maybe even steal the 8th seed. You have Portland, New Orleans, Sacramento, San Antonio, and Phoenix. Out of those 5 teams, is there one that you like the most to come in and steal the 8th seed from Memphis?
From a fan perspective, I am on the New Orleans Pelicans bandwagon. I would love to see
Oh,
them make the playoffs this year.
wow.
Zion versus LeBron would probably be the most highly rated first round playoff matchup in NBA history, and I mean that 100% seriously.
Might be right.
No exaggeration. So much hype in that. However, they actually are tied with Portland. I'm looking at the standings right now.
Mm.
Portland and New Orleans are both 3.5 games of Memphis. Actually, Sacramento as well. They're all 3.5 games back of Memphis. If I had to pick one team out of that group you just mentioned, man, it's tough because I'm leaning. I'm Portland or New Orleans. I'm back and forth on both because Portland has the better roster, but I just don't think Portland has that chemistry that they've had in years past. There
I
just seems to be
disagree with what you
disconnect
said,
there.
actually.
Really? Okay. Well, I could be wrong. I don't know
Okay, so
much
you'd
about.
go with New Orleans is who you'd go with?
I'm back and forth because I feel like the Zion lift is real in New
Yeah.
Orleans, and I think they
Okay,
have
okay.
energy with Zion.
It's a
Um,
fair argument.
and at the end of the day, Portland is a better roster. But you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna go with the New Orleans Pelicans. I'm picking
Okay.
them.
Okay. Yeah. So for me, I would go with the Trailblazers. Now, here's where I disagreed with Trevor. Here's where I disagreed. Portland probably has the worst roster out of. I think they have the
Hold
worst
on,
roster
hold
out of
on, hold
the
on, hold
9,
on,
10, and
hold
11
on.
seeds. I think they have the worst roster out of all these teams right here. And the reason I
What?
think
Hold
that.
on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on.
What? What?
Lillard, McCollum,
Hmm.
Whiteside.
Hmm.
That's high time. You
I mean,
throw
I mean, could you name me their bench? I don't know if you have their bench there. Could you go through their bench?
I bench. Gary Trent Jr., Simons. Um, that's about it. That's all
Yeah,
you guys remember from their bench.
yeah. So
But
they've like
there's a little. So you're saying they have a worse roster than Sacramento?
okay, okay.
I
I
mean,
don't know
again,
about okay.
Zach Collins is not healthy.
Yeah, okay. If they're healthy, that's different. But right now they're not healthy. So for me, I'd say that
He's a they have guys Rodney Hood.
yeah, but he tore his Achilles, so he's out for quite a while. So if I had to
Rodney
go,
Hood did.
yeah. So if I look at this Portland roster
Oh, I actually
without Zach
didn't need to
Collins or
know.
Rodney Hood, you have Anthony Simons, sorry, and Gary Trent Jr., who really isn't that good on your bench, and that is literally it. They don't have anybody else. So Nurkic is hurt as well. So they don't
It's
have
fair. It's
much of
fair.
anything at all. And I look at New Orleans. I look at a team that's set up well for the next I mean, if they all re-signed with New Orleans for the next decade, really, like you have Zion and Brandon Ingram as your core two, and then you have Jackson Hayes, a really nice center who can, he's a decent defender around the rim, but he's also very athletic, can rebound pretty well, and obviously can handle himself around the rim in terms of offensive gameplay. So I think New Orleans just is deeper and more well-rounded and younger. I think that
Huh.
Portland. I think
You're
that
making
Portland.
you're making a great argument for New Orleans to get that
Yes,
eight seed.
but the reason I say Portland wins is because of that age gap. New Orleans, okay, New Orleans is very young, extremely young, with outside of like JJ Redick. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Portland,
Mm-hmm.
not old, but an older team. They have experience with McCollum and Lillard. They have Son Whiteside, who's mid to late 20s. I think if they can get, I don't know if Zach Collins or if Nurkic are coming back. If one of them does, or both of them, I think that even seals the deal of them getting in at that 8 seed. I think Lillard, with his comments this past week, how he said, "I won't play if I don't have a shot at the playoffs." I think that alone right there, I think that screams, I will get us into the playoffs if I have a chance. And I'm not one to doubt Damian Lillard. They will make the playoffs. They will lose to the Lakers in 5 or 6 games, but they will make the playoffs. I think New Orleans goes in with a vengeance next year. I think they get a top 6 seed. Um, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but I just think they're too young. I think that Portland, has the experience. I think Lillard's too good. And so yeah, I think Portland gets the 8 seed. But make no mistake about it, they have a much worse roster than the Pelicans, and I think that they might have a worse roster. I they have a they definitely have the worst bench out of any team that has a chance to make the playoffs. Let me say that. So yeah, that's
Okay,
my.
I agree with you. I agree because of their injuries, they may have a worse bench or a less
Mm,
deep team than New Orleans. But if over this whole pandemic time, if Portland can get guys back like Collins, like Nurkic, they brought in Trevor Ariza, they brought in Melo. You already have Simons and Gary Trent. I mean, that team all of a sudden becomes a pretty deep team if you get most of those guys back.
yes.
So I would argue at full strength, their roster is the best of those three. It's obviously not at full strength, but
Okay. At full strength, yeah, I would agree with that. But right now, I think that
okay,
bench is really really bad. It's bad.
that's fair. That's very
So,
fair. That bench
yeah,
is
I
awful.
just think that's something. I just think that's something to keep an eye on. And I would ask us to talk about the 8 seed in the East, but there's really not many teams to talk about. I mean, you have the Wizards and the Magic. Does anyone really care about them? No, not really.
I
Are
want to
they
say something real quick about the Wizards.
okay? Sure.
I just feel really bad for Bradley Beal because he is an unbelievable player. He is on a horrendous team um, that has also been beaten up by injuries. I mean,
Mm,
obviously John Wall with the Achilles injury. So, but Bradley Beal is an incredible NBA player. I want him to go to a winning team soon. I want him to go to the Lakers. I want him to go to the Clippers. I want him to go to the Bucks. I want him to go even to Boston. Maybe I don't even care. I want him to go to a top NBA team. And I want to see what they would turn into with Bradley Beal on that roster because I think he is one of the most underrated players in the league.
I will say I didn't think he was underrated until this season when he got absolutely snubbed out of the All-Star game. I mean, he averaged I think 28 points per game going into the All-Star game, and he didn't get selected. It's absolutely unbelievable. I don't know what that guy has to do to earn respect, but clearly, like he doesn't have it,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Come to
ridiculous.
Phoenix. We would love to have you in Phoenix.
Oh yeah, just another guard who can't play defense. That's fantastic. Um,
We'll take
uh,
him. I don't care.
so I wanted to say two things. One, I think that if they get the opportunity, I think if John Wall, I don't know what his timetable is. I know he's been hungry. I know he's talking a lot of trash, how he comes back in the league and he's going to show that he's better than ever. I'd love to see it. He was amazing. If he comes back, if the Wizards are able to get that 8 seed from the Magic, and if John Wall was healthy, him and Bradley Beal, Rui Hachimura, Thomas Bryant, not the worst roster in the world. They could steal one game from the Bucks. They will not have a chance to win the series, but it would be a little more entertaining to watch the Wizards with John Wall and Bradley Beal because they are two All-Star caliber players. They are,
Completely agree.
and kind of touching on your point about Bradley Beal going to another team, a super team, right? I think the next big three, and I'm kind of taking this from the sports
He's going to the
media.
Lakers. That's what you're going to say, right? The
No,
Lakers.
I am not saying that. Bradley Beal will be going to the Brooklyn Nets and joining Kyrie Irving and Kevin
Even
Durant.
better. You know what? I like
And
that better
he will
than the
form a big
Lakers.
three with them. They will struggle defending opposing guards, clearly. because they don't have neither of their guards are above average defenders. They're probably average at best. But that offense will be top 3 in the league. That'll be a really, really fun team to watch when they're all healthy. And I think, I don't want to jump the gun here, but I think if they get Bradley Beal, I think they win an NBA Finals. I do. So that'd
Wow.
be really exciting to watch. Now that KD's no longer on the Warriors, me personally, I'm excited to watch him because I think Kevin Durant's one of the most exciting players in the league to watch. Unfortunately, I had to
Hmm.
root against him when he played against my Cleveland Cavaliers. But now that he's back on the Nets, I can root for him. So I think Bradley Beal going to the Nets would be really, really interesting. And yeah, it's just something to think about. So
I couldn't agree more. I love that idea. Bradley Beal go to.
yeah, that'd be a lot of fun, wouldn't it? I don't know if there's anything else we want to touch on. I don't think there really is in regards to the NBA. I mean, other than we got news that the NBA lottery, or sorry, the NBA lottery, the NBA draft is going to be going on sometime in mid to late September. So that's just
So
something
that
to keep an
implies
eye on.
the season will be done right before that, I would
And let's try to
assume.
map that out. Can that be done? Because if they do it in the last week of September, we start back with the season in the last week of July, right? Let's say we play
That
the
gives
regular
them 2 months.
let's play the regular season games. Let's say they play those 8 regular season games. That takes a little less than 2 weeks. That takes like 12 or 13 days. Then you
Hmm.
have, I don't know, you have about a month and a half to do the playoffs. That's probably doable, right? I mean, all in one place. They don't
Yeah.
have to travel. You can tighten up the schedule a little bit if you have to.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
I think
doable.
that's doable. I agree. I think that seems doable. And again, that's another good sign. I'm glad that you threw that in because
Yeah.
that implies if they're having a draft in mid to late September, that means they will have the season finished by mid to late
Mm,
September, which is good for the NBA because that's right when the NFL season starts. So
yeah.
that will be all cleared up as the NFL starts. And then I'm assuming the next NBA season, the 2020-2021 season, would start, I'm guessing around Christmas time, New Year's, sometime in that window,
Yeah.
or a little
Yeah, I think
earlier,
so. I
maybe
think
after
I think I
Thanksgiving.
think their target is Christmas Day actually. Imagine that the NBA starting on Christmas Day. That would be pretty cool. So I
I
think
love it. That's perfect.
yeah,
That's great.
yeah. So that'd be pretty cool. I do want to mention one other thing in regards to the NBA. I think summer league will be really interesting. Hopefully they go through with that. I think that's necessary for young players. But I think that'll be cool because that's going to be going on in like mid-October. So we're going to be having NBA Summer League in October instead of July, and
Hmm.
I'm wondering if that's going to provide more of like an audience for it because I feel like not a lot of people pay attention to the NBA in July. So maybe like I don't know, maybe more people watch it. I don't know. We'll see. Um,
Yes and no.
I know
Um,
the NFL is going on, but I don't know. Maybe
No,
some
not
more
even that.
people.
Not even that. The NBA Summer League in the last couple of years has been hyped up a little bit too much. I shouldn't say a
I
little bit
would
too
agree. I
much.
would agree. Just yeah,
It hasn't lived up to the hype because guys like Zion
sit
didn't
out.
play all that. They sat out. A lot of the top draft picks will probably sit out with the exception of 1 or 2 games.
Hmm.
So people who are going to be eager to watch LaMelo Ball or Wiseman or Anthony Edwards, don't get your hopes up
Sure.
too much.
Hmm.
They probably won't play all that much, especially if they have any sign of injury concern. Then they'll get completely shut down
Yeah, they play them
for
very
summer
safe.
league.
That's true.
So again, keep the
Yep.
expectations in check, but of course it's always fun to watch new draft picks
Mhm.
before in the summer league.
Yeah, so one last thing before we, I mean, honestly, I think finish up because we're just waiting on these sports to really come back. But one
Right.
last thing I wanted to mention was if the NBA season's starting up around Christmas time, uh, will the NBA season after this season will that become a new trend? Will the NBA begin to start now in December, or will they try to push it back to how it used to be in late October? Do you think they're going to try to keep it later? Run the season through the summer, or do you think they're going to try to go back to the old starting the season in October?
It's weird because basketball growing up at the high school level, college level, it's a winter sport. It
Hmm.
starts in November, it ends in early springtime, March, early April.
Sure.
Um, So pushing it back would throw off the college season a little. Pushing back the NBA season would kind of throw off the college draft process
It
a
would throw
little
off the
bit.
draft a little bit. Yes, that's true.
So I don't know if that's something they should do permanently. It is interesting though because if you wait till Christmas to start, you don't have to compete with the NFL regular
Mm.
season at least for the first couple months. But the
Hmm.
NBA regular season is already so long. I mean, is
And
it
you would also
really?
dominate the summer as well. I mean, you would
You would
dominate the
dominate
summer.
the summer because that would be like playoff time too, right around the summer.
Mm.
It's an interesting idea. I actually don't hate the idea of starting on Christmas Day because that is probably the biggest day in the NBA regular season calendar is Christmas Day
Probably.
already.
Yeah.
Um, and again, there's no, I shouldn't say there's no, but there's no sports outside of baseball over the summer.
Yep.
So
Very
having
few.
NBA play through the summer would be great for people like you and me who have nothing else to watch. So,
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I agree. So I just thought it was something interesting to think about, and I don't know, maybe the NBA revises their schedule a little bit, but you're right, they do need to balance it with the college sports because that's very important. You can't have these college players waiting around for the draft to start for 3 months.
hmm
So that is
hmm
something to bear in mind. But yeah, it's just I thought it was something neat to think about, and hopefully over the next 2 weeks we get that firm go. Hopefully this coming Thursday we get the vote yes on one of these potential formats, and the NBA will be coming back. And hopefully in these next few weeks we have the NFL also. These coaches returning, these players back for some small workouts at the facilities. Get that training camp
hmm
started up. Hopefully we have that
hmm
going. So yeah, I don't know if you have any final thoughts.
There is light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like we will be getting sports back very shortly. We already have some sports back, but we will be
Yep.
getting even more back in the next couple of weeks. So that's a great sign to see and a great way to close out this podcast.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So, I guess everyone look forward to watching some soccer, NASCAR, and some golf over the next few weeks, and just wait a few more, wait another month and a half or two for the NBA and the NFL to really get back in the swing of things. So, yeah, thanks everyone for watching. And, I don't know. I hope everyone enjoyed. We'll see you again in 2 weeks with some more news.